Good morning, beauties. I want to talk today about how to end conflict within and with others. And right now, we see a lot of conflict with others in a very big way. But all of that conflict, whether it's interpersonal in a family dynamic, a personal romantic relationship, rioting between, conflict between races, between the sexes, political groups, religious groups, countries, all of that conflict outside of us with others actually originates with conflict that we have within. So allow me a moment to explain what I mean by this. So we feel conflict when we aren't getting our needs met. Now, this is primarily emotional needs, but of course it's also physical needs and the need for freedom and liberty and self-expression and justice. So whenever we're not getting our needs met, it creates conflict. So where does this conflict come from? Most of you have probably been exposed to the idea that what you think about, you bring about. The law of attraction, that you can manifest what you want. Whether it's Think and Grow Rich, the movie The Secret, listening to Abraham Hicks, or all kinds of other sources of this concept that we're able to manifest and create what we want, and that we're the master of that, and that we're not subject to outside forces or tyranny. So there's a part of us that believes that, but there's a part of us that doesn't buy into that, and that's where the conflict comes from. So imagine, if you will, that inside of a prison, inside of the walls of a prison, on some other planet, maybe not how our prisons are run, but imagine that inside of the walls of a city under siege or a prison, that there's a very limited food supply. And all of the people stuck inside of those walls are fighting for that little bit of food that is there. And there's just this scarcity, and it creates all of this conflict and fighting because they want to get the last little bit that there is for themselves because there's not enough to go around. Meanwhile, on the outside of those walls are fields of food and abundance that's unlimited. They just don't have access to it. They are cut off from all of that abundance. Now, we would look at the 1% and say, they already have so much. How could they possibly be in a scarcity mindset? Why would they be hoarding and trying to oppress people and hold food or resources or abundance from other people when they have more than they could ever use? But that, my friends, is not what they are scarce in. They are scarce in what all of us are scarce in, and that is the feelings of abundance, the feeling of being good enough, the feeling of being secure, the feeling of having power. And just like those inmates in the prison, when we are cut off from our true power, our true connection with the divine, with that unlimited source of joy, peace, bliss, abundance, happiness, then we feel scarce no matter how much stuff we have. And then the way that we're fighting or scrapping over the limited resources, it's not limited resources of food. They're fighting over the limited resource of power, their perceived limited resource of power. They're not connected to their true power within. They don't truly like themselves or love themselves or feel connected to their beauty and perfection as a divine being. And so because they're cut off from that, they perceive that there's a limited amount of power, and they're going to try to take yours so that they can have enough for themselves. So where does this disconnect come from? The problem is this perception of scarcity, whether it's resources or whether it's power or abundance of some sort. Where does this disconnect come from? Well, it comes from the mind. Okay, if we're really connected to the heart, we know and we're tuned into that, and we have all that we need and that we want. But when we're in the mind, the subconscious limiting beliefs is where that disconnect comes from. So we are all operating based on past traumas, many or huge, past negative experiences where we developed a limiting belief about ourselves, about our relationship with others, about our relationship with the world, our place in the world, things like that. So just imagine, if you will, some 1%er or a cop that's really, got a chip on his shoulder. I know that there's lots of good cops out there, of course. I'm just using an example because that's what all of the focus is right now. Cops are people first. 1%ers are people first. And they have the same emotions and limitations as everybody else. So imagine that some, poor little rich boy grows up in a household where he just never really gets his father's approval. And so he always feels like his father's love is withheld for him. And he always feels like he's never really good enough. And those fears of abandonment and rejection are just lurking right there in the background all the time. So his belief is that he's not good enough and he's constantly trying to prove himself. And in his family culture, the way to prove yourself is that you can make tons of money, not a lot of money, tons of money, have all this power, have all of this prestige, show what you can do and constantly prove yourself. And there's not enough money in the world. When you have that hole in your heart that you're not good enough, when you have that fear of rejection nipping at your heels, there's not enough money in the world to fill that hole, to prove to yourself that you're good enough. There's not enough power in the world. There's not enough influence. There's not enough manipulation, control. None of it will ever satisfy that hole in your heart, that fear that you're not good enough or that you're going to be rejected. And that's a subconscious belief. And I don't care how powerful somebody looks and what position they may attain in life, there's a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old inside of them. They're still locked in time, feeling sad, rejected, hurt, or maybe bullied. Maybe, for an example, I don't know anything about the cop that was involved in this recent situation with George Floyd, but as an example of how these things work, imagine that there is a boy who's bullied in junior high or elementary school, and he feels that helplessness, that powerlessness, and that just burns inside of him. And he swears to himself that he's going to grow up and that'll never happen to him again. And if anybody even looks at him a certain way or uses a tone of voice or anything that smacks of that disrespect, it triggers all of that wound inside of him that's never been healed, and he reacts accordingly. So most of the time, we're only reacting to what's actually happened, a very small percentage, a very small fraction of what's going on is what we're reacting to. We're reacting to that and everything that's triggering inside of us, those unhealed wounds. And we have internal conflict. Part of me wants to quit smoking, part of me wants to keep smoking. Part of me wants to be in a loving relationship, part of me has this anger that just comes out and I have no control of it. Part of me really loves and trusts my boyfriends, and part of me has this abandonment issue, this jealousy that comes out and ruins the relationship every single time. It's like we're living with our own Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We don't even understand where these conflicts come inside of ourselves, and they ruin our own lives and our own relationships. And then on the next level, we project all of that onto the world around us, and it influences how we react to people. We're not reacting to him or to her. We're reacting to everything that they're triggering or reminding us of subconsciously. And then we're trying to fill that hole, whether it's we feeling disrespected or not loved or not good enough. And we're operating from all of these limitations, past traumas, and we're not even connected to who we mean to be, want to be, or what's possible for us. But when we can clear that away and make that true connection with our own higher self, with the God within, guess what? There's an unlimited supply of resources and an unlimited supply of love, peace, security, knowing you're good enough as your perfect divine self, knowing that you're untouchable, knowing that really there's no force in the universe that can harm you. Because when you're part of the oneness, when you're truly connected with the oneness, no harm or destruction can come into that space. And that is your birthright. And that is what you are capable of. You are a limitless divine being. And it's only the belief that you're not that's creating the internal conflict, the interpersonal conflict, and the conflict in the world. And I know that sounds like an oversimplification. I get that, because it looks so big and so unmanageable. But when we really know that no one that's disconnected from their higher self could ever be a force against us if we are connected to our higher self, our divine self, we're more powerful. If we're connected, we're more powerful than any force outside of us. And guess what? And if they were connected, they're not going to come against you anyway, because it would be part of the oneness. So the answer truly is one by one, connecting within, making that change from the inside out. Not only knowing that, you can have the resources that you want, and that you have the love and that you peace, and that you're good enough, but also knowing that you have true power, true divine power, and no force can come against you. That's your birthright. That's your reality if you choose it. But it begins by looking within, finding out what is being triggered. What are these wounds? What are these traumas that are causing me to believe that I can be a victim, causing me to believe that somebody can take my good from me, or withhold my good from me, or come against me? So I encourage you, I challenge you, I plead with you to go within. Heal that little 3-year-old inside of you. Pick them up, hold them close to you. Let them know they matter, that you're here for them, that you'll always love them and they'll never be alone. You'll always be watching out for them. And heal the 5-year-old inside of you and the 10-year-old inside of you. And have that inner child integration and create that oneness within yourself so that you feel complete and whole and at peace inside. And then that's what will radiate around you to be a force for positive change in the midst of all the turmoil and all the conflict. Because that's what people really need. And until we make that change within, we will never see that change in the world. The only way to really create peace with others is to create peace within. Go into meditation. Be kind to yourself. Look around and see the parts of you that need to be healed. That believe that any force is more powerful than you, because it's not. Connect within. Because when you're plugged in and tuned in and tapped in and turned on, you are a power like no other. There's no lack. There's no limitation. You are the power. Own it. Live it. Show it to others. And let's change the world within and with others. Namaste. Thank you for listening.